Hey guys, this is God of Politics, and before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. I'll have both of those linked down in the description. But today's video is going to be what the electoral map will look like 20 years from now. This is more of a prediction and kind of giving insight to what the electoral map rather than an actual definitive, how I know it's going to go, because I really don't know. The parties could switch up a lot. We see that the party of Ronald Reagan is different from the party of Donald Trump. Ronald Reagan was for many different things that Donald Trump is not for. Same thing with the Democrats. You see Bill Clinton is not for the same things that Bernie Sanders was. So the parties could shift up, and that will majorly affect this. But I'm going to really analyzing trends the most, how the trends are going to affect everything, how that will affect the Democrats' chances of winning, how it will affect the Republicans' chances of winning. And this is very dependent on the candidate. This is very dependent on the scenario going on. This is kind of a general consensus of how it is going to go. You guys requested this. Some of you requested that we do it further in the future. I did one for 2020. I did one for 2024. This is going to be for 20 years in the future. I've kind of predicted the electoral votes. We have some electoral vote changes in 2020, but for 2030, the 2030 changes and even the 2040 changes, 20 years from now, this is how I'm predicting it to go. Washington's going to gain one, Oregon's gaining one, California's losing one, Nevada's gaining one, Utah's gaining one, Arizona's gaining two, Colorado's gaining one, Montana's gaining one, Kansas losing one, Texas gaining five, Mississippi losing one, Alabama losing one, Georgia gaining one, Florida gaining two, North Carolina gaining one, Virginia gaining one, West Virginia losing one, Ohio losing two, Michigan losing two, Wisconsin losing one, Minnesota losing one, as well as Pennsylvania losing two, New York losing two, Rhode Island losing two. I believe that is all of the changes I have to this electoral map. We see that there are an increase in electoral votes in the Sun Belt, the Texas area, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, the Latino areas, especially like places like Florida as well. And then we see people are moving away from the east, the northeast, and they're moving down south, places like Virginia, North Carolina, and to the west. And so that's the trend that I think we'll continue to see unless we see a limiting immigration system, something like that. But this is how I predict it to be so far. But now let's start filling out the map. So these safe states, the states that are still going to be safe, Idaho, actually let's just go to the fill. Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, all of Nebraska except for the 2nd District, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio will be safe, Indiana will be safe, Missouri will be safe, Iowa will be safe, South Carolina will be safe, and that is going to be 137 safe electoral votes for the Republicans, and then for the Democrats, they'll get Washington safe, California, actually, Republicans will get Alaska safe as well. So that's 140 safe electoral votes for the Republicans, and then for the Democrats, they'll get Washington, California, New Mexico, Colorado, Hawaii. These states are just trending. New Mexico, Colorado, they're just trending immensely. They used to be the states that either candidate had to win back in the 90s, and they were states that even George Bush won in 2004 against John Kerry, but now it looks like that is no longer. The Latino vote, the suburban vote is trending blue heavily, and that has made it a much more blue state, so those states will be safe, as well as Illinois will still be a safe state, as well as Virginia will now be a safe state, New York, Maryland, as well as New Jersey, and Massachusetts, and Vermont, and Maine's 1st District, and D.C. So that is going to be 187 safe electoral votes for the Democrats and 140 safe electoral votes for the Republicans. There's a lot less battleground states. You'll see that when I fill out the likely states especially. But there's a lot less places that there is to garner electoral votes, and that's going to be important. We'll do the likely and until states, starting off in the west here, actually. Oregon, I think, will be a lucky margin, just might get a bit closer because the gaining influence of the rural voters. Nevada, the Latino voters, unless Latino voters can go to Republicans in large numbers, the Clark County suburbs and the Clark County, Las Vegas area, it's just going to have so much impact on the state, and that's going to keep it a blue state and keep it a likely blue state. Next one is Arizona. Arizona is going to be likely blue soon. It could even be blue in 2020, and then by 2040, you think the Latino influence, Maricopa County will be solid blue, and the overall state, what you see everywhere right now is trending blue, and you see the overall state is trending blue as well. And so I think that trend will continue. And by 2040-ish, it'll be a likely margin state. Kansas will also be a likely margin. You just have Johnson County here that has become a little bit more blue. It barely went to Trump at trended 15 points blue in 2016. And while I do have it losing electoral vote, it could still get a bit closer, but it still will be red regardless. Texas, I'm going to put it a lean Democratic state. You're thinking 20 years from now, you think Democrats will continue to gain in Travis County and Austin. They'll continue to gain in Harris County and in Houston. They'll continue to gain in Dallas, Fort Worth, those areas, and they'll continue to gain down south where you have the Latino influence, and that will keep going until it eventually turns into a blue state. And 20 years from now, you're thinking that it really easily could turn to a blue state, and that's why I will put it at a lean blue state by 2040-ish. Florida down here, Florida, I believe will be a tilt margin to the Democrats. It is still going to be a safe state by this time, I think, but the Latino voters are going to make a difference. The Miami-Dade, Broward County areas are going to make a difference as well. I think of the Panhandle, Republicans are kind of getting maxed out in that area, and that they will have less influence in more elections coming up, and it'll be more down south in the middle of the state, the Tampa Bay area, and I think that those areas are going to become more blue, making it a tilt margin state. Georgia, also with its gained electoral vote, I believe is going to be a lean margin state to the Democrats. I believe of these three states, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, Arizona will flip first, then Georgia, then Texas. I believe Georgia is another state where you have the suburban influence is really helping Democrats out here. The Atlanta suburbs are trending blue heavily, and I do expect that to continue. Republicans are losing the suburbs, and they really haven't found a way to back that up. And unless they can make some outreach to maybe black voters and win some black voters over, I can't really see they have much of a hold on this state. Maybe after 2024, 2028, but by then it'll definitely be a blue state. You could even say this could be a likely margin by then, because Georgia, Atlanta's the main big city, and it has so much influence, and if that turns completely blue, the state will turn completely blue as well, similar to how New York works. We have New York City is the only main blue area there, but it makes the whole state blue because of it. You might see a similar situation down in Georgia. North Carolina will be a lean blue state as well. Again, the Winston-Salem area, the Raleigh area, the suburbs of those areas, Republicans are maxed out in rural areas. Democrats are still gaining in the suburban areas that I just mentioned. That trend will continue. I believe that this trend will continue across the country, except maybe in the Rust Belt. But even if you look in the Rust Belt, as I talked about before, and I'll talk about it today, that the suburbs in the Rust Belt, despite the fact that the state trended overall really red, the suburbs still trended blue, and that's something they have to watch out for, because if it trended blue in the Rust Belt, you're definitely going to think that it trends blue down south, where you have a gaining population, gaining black population, gaining Latino population. And that's going to help in a state like North Carolina, where I believe that it will be a lean margin for the Democrats. Going up here to the Northeast, Delaware likely, Connecticut likely, Rhode Island likely. These states are safe states right now. I think they might get a bit closer because there's more rural voters, there's more young voters moving away to the bigger cities, places like Philadelphia, places like New York, places like Boston. They're moving away from those areas to those cities, and that could make the state a bit older, therefore making it a bit more Republican. We could see shifting voter patterns. We could see older voters become more Democrat, younger voters become a Republican. Not saying that's going to happen. It's just anything could happen, really. Ronald Reagan won young voters. Ronald Reagan didn't do well amongst Latino voters, but George Bush did do well amongst Latino voters. Really, you just do not know how things are going to turn out. And so those states are going to be likely, in my opinion, but still fairly solidly Democratic states. New Hampshire will also be a lean margin. People are saying this is trending red, but I really disagree. You look at states like Vermont and New Hampshire. These used to be reliably Republican states, states that went to Republicans by 30 points. Now they go to Democrats pretty easily. And while in 2016 New Hampshire barely went to the Democratic column, it is a more traditional state socially than Vermont. While Vermont has gone blue by a lot larger margins, New Hampshire is still a blue state, and I expect that the Hillary Clinton hatred in this state, as it was the sister state of Bernie Sanders, will kind of fade away, and you might see more neoliberal candidates being elected from this state. New Hampshire, I really think, could elect any Democratic candidate. If they can elect Hillary Clinton, I believe that they could elect pretty much anybody. As well as Maine's 2nd District will be a safe margin, and I mentioned that before, and Maine at large will be a tilt margin towards the Democrats. Maine's 2nd District is just a very rural area that can trend towards the Republican column and make it so that they are more competitive in in the Northeast. Maybe they run some Rockefeller Republicans and do better in the Northeast. We really don't know about that, but if they do, they could easily win Maine's second district, maybe win Maine at large, but at this point I'll put Maine at large in the tilt Democratic column. Now going over here to the Rust Belt, we see the Democrats are already at 341 electoral votes, so that's a huge landslide already, and we haven't even done the Rust Belt yet. But good news for Republicans, I do believe that they will win most of the Rust Belt, but first, we're going to go to Nebraska's second district, a very suburban district that's been trending red, only went to Trump by 2 points in 2016, would have gone to the Democrat in 2018 probably if they didn't run a Bernie bro, but that's another debate to talk about. But Nebraska's second district by this time, I believe, will be going to the Democratic column in 20 years from now. But to the Rust Belt here, first we'll start off with Michigan. I believe that Michigan will be a lean margin. You have a lot of legacy Dems in the northern areas that are leaving the party because you have people like Colin Peterson in Minnesota's 4th district who are now in districts that Trump won by 30 points, but that was not the case when he was first elected back in 1992. And so that's something that's really changing in the state of Minnesota, and I believe that that trend will continue. The rural voters that were once legacy Democrats will go over to the Republican side. Maybe if you see more populist Republican candidates, I don't know, but that's how I see it going out. Same thing with Wisconsin. You have a lot of legacy Dems, but this is one of the most red of this like kind of northern part here where you see Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Those states, out of those 4 states, Wisconsin will be the most red out of them, similar to Ohio, which Ohio is similar to Indiana. Indiana was similar to Missouri back in 2008. And so that trend will continue, and Wisconsin will become a likely red state. Minnesota will be a tilt red state. It's still a traditionally blue state. It's still controlled by Democrats. Again, a Democratic governor, 2 Democratic senators, and it's been that way for a while. And Democrats have only lost it once in the presidential election race since 1984. And so, they can still win these states. It's not like it's going to go away from them, but it's just the question of whether the legacy Dems will still stay with them or whether they will continue to trend towards the Republican column. And so at this point, I would say that it will be a tilt Republican state, but that easily could change. Same thing with the rest of this Rust Belt. Whether that trend to the red column continues or whether Democrats can buck the trends, run an Obama-style candidate, do something like that, and win the state back. But finally is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's rural areas are having a major influence in the state. You see the areas where Democrats are trending at blue is the Philadelphia area and the Pittsburgh area. The suburbs of those areas will keep the state competitive, but the rural areas are trending red heavily. Same thing with the rest of the Rust Belt. And that trend continues. Republicans will do very well in the Rust Belt. Maybe if the Republicans run candidates like Mitt Romney, like John McCain, those kind of establishment-style Republicans, they could lose the Rust Belt and they might do better in the Sun Belt. We just don't know. But that's something that we'll see in the future. This is a kind of a very preliminary map of what the electoral map could look like in 20 years. But as of now, I believe that it's very good news for the Democrats. I'd put in 342 electoral votes for the Democrats, 196 electoral votes for Republicans, a landslide victory for Democrats. But this is all very dependent on which candidate runs, what kind of candidate they are, where they're from, and many other factors. Anything could change, but this is my map for now. So yeah. Thank you all for watching this video. Please like and subscribe as always. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, and I will see you guys later.